Well, greetings, everybody. I am here this evening with Terra Lynch, principal of Headwaters School in Austin, Texas. Yes, principal, consultant, author, and just overall good person. I got to know Terra a bit from my time in Austin, having been a colleague of hers and working closely on a number of different initiatives and seeing her step into the role of the principalship once I departed to Florida and leaving feeling confident that the school was in good hands. And I'm happy to have Terra with me here this evening because I'm eager to learn more about what she's been up to, her experience as a first year principal. I think it'll be good content for folks to hear, not just those who are in administration, but also teachers, the trials and triumphs of a principal, and just talking about that first year, the experiences. And so grateful to have you here. Terra Lynch is with us, folks, and we're gonna have a good one. Y'all stay engaged. Terra, thank you for being here. Welcome to our classroom.
Roberto, it's so good to be back in the classroom with you. I didn't have any snacks to share with you, which is sometimes part of our meeting protocol. It's very tiring and hungry in the day-to-day of the life of a school. But when we're in the same place, we'll have to do that.
That was one of the things that I looked forward to, Terra, whenever we got together. You were a person that I could rely on for snacks.
As a person who's always hungry, I'm always happy to provide snacks for others. So, I mean, and also there's just something about sharing food that is, I definitely appreciate. I am not the world's best cook, but I do love having a bunch of people over for dinner and eating together. So whether it's a snack or a meal, just good human. I appreciate that way of connecting with people.
Absolutely. Food and fellowship is essential.
Mm-hmm.
So, Terra, I want to jump right in. Can you tell us a bit about who you are? I mentioned that you're the principal at Headwaters, but tell us a little bit about who you are as a person, but also as an educator.
Sure. I think that two pieces of who I am as an educator that I think are important is that I'm a career changer. So I didn't start in education. I started in project management. And that actually really helped me, I think, in terms of perspective and systems and knowing different ways to approach a problem. And then I think another piece for me that was my formation as a educator was that I taught in New York City for 10 years. And I looped ninth and 10th grade. I often got in ninth grade again and again for some reason. And so those years in New York City were formative because they were my first years as a teacher, also because I had such a great leader in my principal as well. And my colleagues were just amazing. So, well, I haven't even talked about the kids. I mean, these kids are now in their 30s. And yeah, it was a pretty amazing time to be teaching in New York City. So those are two of the ways I describe myself as an educator. I'm also the child and grandchild of educators, and I'm also a parent. That really comes into who I am as an educator as well. I've done a fair amount of parent advocacy around dyslexia because both my kids are dyslexia, and the services for them I found were lacking, and being able to know a little bit about being in education allowed me to bring that awareness to others who are not in education and struggling. So those are some of the ways that I describe myself as an educator, in addition to middle school principal, which I do feel like I wear as a badge. And I say that because middle school, unfortunately, was not always a great place for people when I talk to them and they're adults. And one of my own goals is to have middle schoolers who are happy. They can be angsty, they can be awkward, but to be learning and growing about who they are. So that's me.
Basically, you want to make middle school great again.
You went there, didn't you? Yeah,
Right.
I want to make middle school a positive experience for kids and for their parents. Because this
Absolutely.
is also the time when one of my messages to parents is this is a time for parents to step back and to let their children step up and make decisions that might be different than theirs, maybe definitely make mistakes and to feel those consequences. And so part of it is parents, that's okay. It's actually great. It's great for them to get that practice, because that is the best way I know to learn, is to actually talk about it, think about it, try it, reflect, try again if it didn't quite go that way. So yeah, I love middle school.
Right. They need room to stumble and stand.
Absolutely. I also like the idea of floundering. Like, it's all flounder.
That sounds very Nemo-ish.
It is. Now your children are younger than mine, so it's been about very Nemo-ish. Yeah, I
No, but
thank you for reminding me that that
Nemo's
is about middle school. That whole movie.
Finding Nemo's a classic movie. It's ageless.
It is ageless, and that really is what it's about, right? The child and a parent negotiating with each other about their own fears and hopes, and giving each other freedom to express those. Yeah, okay, well, we're done. Middle school in a nutshell. Watch Finding Nemo
That's
again and
it.
again.
That's it. Interview
But
over.
no, but actually the friendship piece too, how the friends support each other in their quests and their searches, and they look out for each other. I think that is another wonderful analogy to middle school, for sure.
That's what I'm here for, Terra. Terra, talk to me about the triumphs in your first year as principal.
Triumphs. Okay. So going in, what I thought would help me, some of the things I thought would help me did help. And what those are is working with parents. I had led parent groups. I am a parent. I felt comfortable working with parents. And the COVID, having COVID, and in our school, the parents had to show like an app to show that their children were able to come in. And while that was a bit of a hassle in some ways, I actually really loved that morning time with the parents in the car. At my school, there are a lot of dogs that come in the car to drop off the kids. So saying hello to the dogs of Headwaters. I really, those little daily routines created a relationship with the parents that I really treasured. And then when more difficult conversations came up, we had that. So I think that parent piece felt like a triumph for me, in terms of the first year. And then in terms of the students, just being able to welcome them back. For many of them, that was the first full year in school. I mean, what a gift to be able to give to them, and they really appreciated it. They really appreciated being together with their peers. We've got a fairly open campus on a number of houses, so that feeling, especially for the sixth graders, to come and kind of look around like, whoa, this is school, and to see them grow from not really knowing even how to cross the street at times, just remembering to look both ways, to really, making plans to go walk up to the Whole Foods with their friends, just seeing that growth in their confidence in being in a downtown, being in the city, really felt like a big triumph to me. And then I think I do love a group of teachers. We had a fair amount of turnover last year, so having the new teachers become integrated, it's a process to say goodbye to people you've worked with before, but that felt like a triumph as well. But really, I think my favorite piece were about our community meetings. So you remember, we used to get together in our studio. Eighth graders get to sit on chairs. They get the esteemed role of being the oldest in middle school. Everyone else sits on the floor, but in COVID, you couldn't get 95 kids in that one little room. So we ended up setting up on Wednesdays for half an hour underneath the studio in a parking lot. So usually teachers remember not to park there. Sometimes they have to work around a car, like figure out whose is this? Can you please move your car? But the reason I say this is triumph, even though early in the year it was kind of like pulling my hair out in terms of managing a group that size, is that by mid-year, really, but highlight for me was towards the end of the year, we had our second performance. Pizzos is the name of the community meeting. So for performance pizza, to see how wrapped almost 100 students were in watching their peers perform music, dance. One group of 8th graders had created their own dance, and they had costumes donated from a parent who was in theater. And I looked around and just saw just the incredible attention 100 kids were giving to their peers in a parking lot, sitting on tarps, holding up the screen, and in some cases, the PA system, they got that figured out. I mean, that to me was the pinnacle, because I guess because it's so not concrete. I mean, this is not a room. We are not in a room. We are in a parking lot, but you wouldn't know it's a parking lot, because for now in this space, we are a community who knows the routines for getting it set up, for getting it put away, and we are just in the moment appreciating each other. So that encapsulated so much of the struggle in terms of pizza, kids getting used to being on campus, flexible thinking, showing appreciation, taking a risk. I think that community meeting really is my favorite part when I think about last year. That was the biggest triumph that I feel proud about. And at the same time, I'm happy that this year we will be moving back into the studio. Yeah. But to know we can do it feels really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all types of challenges, right? All our schools face so many challenges during this COVID era that forced us to make all types of adjustments. Some in very uncomfortable situations, some that inspired new ideas, new ways, all types of innovation. And so it's awesome to hear that some of those early tensions and early problems, I guess you would say, or challenges,
Sure,
resulted in a fruitful end to the school year and greater community.
Fruitful and beautiful, and community, greater community, and just seeing that comfort. It's like a combination of being known, knowing what to do. That's what I mean by comfort. Knowing the people around you, knowing you're safe. All that just felt really, really great. And also, it was all student run. I mean, of course, I'm always keep my eye out. Who's doing what? What's going on? Can we see everyone? Can everyone make eye contact? But the students ran it. That's really, they got that equipment set up. They did the mindfulness. We started with we always start with a song, which is a leftover from you. And only once did they say, "Tara, the song you recommended, I can't find a clean version." It was just a local Austin artist. I was like, okay, fine. We won't be hearing her today.
That's great.
But again, they brought it up. They're like, "Sorry, Tara, we can't find a clean version on YouTube to play." I'm like, okay, plan B.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, that student run. Beautiful, wonderful, gawky student leaders.
One of the pillars of texture teaching is being student driven. And yes. I know that part of Lorena's work and part of texture teaching was definitely influenced by some of her experience at Headwaters. So love to hear the fact that things are still being student driven and that the kids have the space to step into their leadership potential. Now, within what you just shared as it relates to triumph, there was a strand of trial that I heard. And I don't think we could talk about the triumph without talking about the trial. So I'd love to hear you elaborate a bit more about the trials that you faced as a first-year principal.
Sure. And I'm not going to belabor the pandemic changes part of the trials. Though we could do a whole episode on that. To me, when I'm thinking back on the year, that certainly absolutely was the thread. But when I think about that student voice piece, one of the trials for me and for us as a school was both with the students and the parents and the guides, that understanding of our community agreements, which are very aspirational and beautiful and wonderful, and the handbook, which is is not exactly aspirational. It's a little more nuts and bolts, but parts of it are easy. You have to wear shoes to school. You can't bring a weapon, even a fake one. Like some of those are easy. Others are more nuanced. And one of the challenges last year was for me to figure out, oh, there are all these different layers. How do I work with the students and the guys and the parents to set boundaries when the boundary isn't always known? And that came up in many ways. I think that the communication and socializing outside of school on devices, whether it's a phone or Discord on the computer, that was a trial because it's not school property. It's not happening in school, but of course it has an impact on, well, maybe not of course, but it did have an impact in school. And so that was a trial too, stepping through. The parents don't always know what's going on. The kids aren't always forthright, or maybe they'll tell someone and then a rumor starts. And by the time it gets to me, it's like, well, what really happened? You smile a little bit. I know that happened too. And so that piece, like the piecing through, I don't want to say consequences, but sometimes people are like, well, there's got to be consequence for this. Or no, more it was like, I think piecing through the fact that there isn't always a P if P implies Q, because it depends. Who was it? When did it happen? What happened before? What's the relationship with these kids? I definitely sense frustration. And so that was a trial to pull through that. And also, the idea of being student led is wonderful, and I just keep seeing it in the framework of restorative justice. We as a school, we start with mindfulness, we do check-ins, but we don't call it restorative justice. And in some ways that made it harder in these disciplinary situations, or when someone made a decision that caused harm, to set the expectation in just a year that you may not know what the consequences were, because it might not be your business. Or you may not be happy with what the consequences are. Or you may want, you being, again, a student, a parent at times, a guide, or you may want something different, or you may want something punitive, and that's not really where I'm going to go. So that piece is going to be ongoing, I know for sure. But I feel like we made progress there, and that was one of the trial areas, and that will be ongoing. I mean, again, we've got kids 6th, 7th, and 8th coming through. There's always a new crop to learn about, practice, make these mistakes, understand, co-create some consequences or some repair. So that will be an ongoing piece that takes more fine-tuning. So that is one. And then also just, I think for me, what took me a little bit by surprise was how much the stuff of life impacted. I mean, being in the classroom and working with families, I know that everyone has a lot going on, but I think what was a challenge for me was, and I'm still working on it, but is how do I hold that information, knowing sadness, pain, struggle of the people in the community? How can I hold that information, hold the space for them, and not get pulled down by it, and also maintain some of the administrative pieces, like you got to take PTO, got to get a sub, that was a tension that I would put in trial might be a little dramatic, but that definitely was a challenge last year.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable and transparent. I think it's important for folks to hear. Sometimes individuals don't know some of the stuff that we navigate as principals. Mm-hmm. And it's important to have that insight. What do you anticipate to be different in year 2? Positive or negative? What do you anticipate will be different?
Well, let's see. Of course, having had an experience of a year under my belt allows me to feel more prepared for the year in terms of what may come. Of course, the school is a living organism and you never know what's going to come.
That's right.
But I do think that I'll be able to build on the work that I did last year pretty much across the board. So whether it's just be more clear from the get-go about the way we respond to student behaviors that aren't fitting with our community agreements, or the way I respond to, hey, Tara, I can't come in for such and such because of such and such. I think that I just feel like that will, I guess it'll be different. There'll be the similar thread, but it'll be different because it won't be so brand new, and I can build on the basis rather than starting from scratch. Also, what's going to be different this year is I have some partners that I'm working with, some nonprofits, and I'm really, really excited to be working with. That's going to help. That's going to help take the ideas, many of the ideas that I have, and I think they're going to help me bring things to the school a little more quickly on the staff level, for example. I'm excited to be working with an organization that's going to help with facilitative leadership. So this very decentralized approach of teaching and learning. And then there's another partnership with a local Austin organization that's helping us build a 7th and 8th grade team, for lack of a better word. But basically, they're going to help train students in consent and boundaries. And then those students will be training their peers in consent and boundaries. And it's very intentional. It's 7th and 8th graders. So when the 8th graders move on, the 7th graders move up, a new crew goes. So as you know, the peers are, hearing from a peer goes a lot further to a middle schooler than hearing from us adults. So that's got me really excited too. So I think that'll be different this year. Of course, we'll have a new crop of 6th graders. We got bigger classes in all three grades. So that's super exciting, but it's going to be, I don't know who those little personalities are yet, and they're going to make their impact. So that's going to be different this year too. And I'm really looking forward to them coming in. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what surprised you most this past year?
So the surprises from last year, I want to say how tiring it was, but I had an inkling of that. I think maybe the surprise just builds on that trial piece, just learning, the things that are outside, the impact of the events outside of school, how much they make a difference in my job and in the teachers and the students' lives, whether that's, of course, that's the stuff in the family, but that's also city level laws, state level laws. As you know, I grew up in Buffalo. So when the shooting happened in Buffalo, world events impact the day-to-day of this 100-person middle school in downtown Austin. So that, I think, the degree to which that makes an impact, that was a surprise for me. I mean, of course, there are humans living in the world. They're going to be impacted, but that took more, that had more of an impact than I thought. That was definitely a surprise. Yeah.
Right. And those are factors that we can't control. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know how people are going to respond to. And obviously there's always something going on in our world, right? So so many factors that ultimately impact the experience of leading a school, right? And doing community.
Absolutely. And I think one of the pieces that I think through is, just I have my own reactions to those, and then I have, I keep that in mind, but I also it's really about the students and what their impact is. And sometimes, usually they'll tell me or tell their advisors, but kind of how do I what are the ways that I can have that ongoing dialogue with the students so that I know what's on their mind. I love it when people bring things up. That makes my job so much easier. Like, this is important to you. Let's come up with a plan and what's the best way we can deal with it. But I also know, working with groups, that people don't always bring things up. And so
Right.
that's part of the job too. What isn't coming up to me that might be coming up in classrooms or in advisories, and how can we raise that to the larger group if that's having an impact on the students?
Absolutely. What are you doing as a school leader to sustain an anti-bias and anti-racist culture at your school?
Yeah, sure. I do think of our student community meetings as part of the ABAR work because they're student led. The topics and issues come from the students. I think that um, that more decentralized structure allows topics and issues to come up that I, as a white female educator, may not have on the top of my board. So that's definitely part of it. As I said, just moving into thinking through restorative practices and working with the community to think through, harm and repair. Is this punitive or restorative? Like, why, having that conversation with each other about what our experiences were, how those impact what we do, and really keeping the kids in mind. Because we are in downtown Austin, I had students do some bystander training since they are out on the street with classes and after school. So that training, there are various iterations of it. Some can be just general bystander, if something happens to anyone around you, and then some of them are more focused in terms of if there's racial profiling or anti-Semitic comments or misogynistic comments. So that's something that I did last year and will continue this year. And then I do love our Civil Rights Day. That is it's a ritual that has been going on for years and years at the school. What I love about it is the students choose the topic based on what's important to them, and then we get to bring community members and nonprofits, and it's just a really wonderful day out, separate from regular classes, where students can make connections. A lot of students lead the sessions themselves, so that feels important in terms of anti-bias and anti-racist training, because the topics being about social justice directly speak to those. I mean, last year it was civil rights in Texas, because there's been so many laws being passed here in Texas. The year before it was Black Lives Matter, so it's very topical what the kids are interested in. So that's a really great way to raise awareness and allow students to learn and to speak.
What's the message of encouragement that you would like to offer our listeners?
Well, let's see. A message of encouragement. I don't have like that quotable ring kind of phrase, but I have been appreciating and am encouraging others to take a pause in between tasks or classes or meetings to just like take a beat, sort of a self check-in, practice a little breathing, a little centering, get grounded. So I would encourage that. I've just been thinking a lot about how fast life goes, and finding that having those times throughout the day just to pause and be in the present as much as I can be, without thinking of the next or the last thing, has been really helpful. And just the simple, just relishing the simple, the day-to-day, maybe even just the chores of life or the day-to-day routines of life, just taking that moment to pause, reflect before moving on. So I would encourage others to try that, see if it works for them too. And I guess I would also encourage folks to I'm thinking of, that life balance, just to talk to their supervisors about it. And I really would encourage people to keep their hobbies going, to take time away from work as well. Yeah. I think especially in education, you can always do more. People love to help. People love to problem solve. That's part of the job. And again, like taking that break to do other things, that self-care, I guess I would recommend.
Pause and reflect, people, and take time. Take time away.
Take time
Well,
away. Mm-hmm.
Terra, where can folks follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Terra Teacher. You can go to my website, terralynch.com. And those are the two places. My Instagram is private. That's a change that I've made over the years in education. And Facebook is for my old friends from growing up in Buffalo. So yeah, Twitter and my website. Please find me. Oh, you can find me on Amazon or maybe your local bookstore. You can purchase Protocols in the Classroom.
I was just going to tell you, make sure you tell us the name of the book, plug in the book. All right, folks. Protocols in Classroom. Make sure you go out there, support Terra Lynch. Wonderful work that she's doing. Again, she is the middle school director at Headwaters School in Austin, Texas. And it's been a pleasure to have you in our classroom to learn about your experiences, the trials, triumphs, surprises that you went through in the first year, and also what you are anticipating going into year 2. Wish you the best in this school year. Give my love to the Headwaters community, and I look forward to hearing some reports throughout the course of the year.
Thank you so much, Roberto. Great to be in your classroom. I think the bell's ringing.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.